Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having this hearing today. For generations, the textile industry has been a pillar of the economy in both South Carolina and the United States. Darling Fibers, in the district I represent, is one of the largest domestic producers of high-quality fibers for fabric, garment, and fashion industries. Milliken, also in South Carolina, is located in Spartanburg and has been in the business since the 1800s. I've heard from many of my constituents concerning their concerns regarding de minimis. So most of my questions are going to be centered around that. De minimis imports from places like China have exceeded 1 billion total packages just last year, according to the CBP reports. E-commerce giants are flooding the U.S. market with low-cost products. Many of them, as we know from the hearing today, are counterfeit, and yet they avoid inspection and taxes. Unfortunately, this number, I think, is expected to grow in the coming years. Deputy Director Lord, you oversee CBP policy and enforcement priorities, and I've heard from many constituent companies about the problems they are facing due to the influx of de minimis packages entering the U.S. We've heard that 85% of all IP seizures occur in the de minimis environment, and it's become a highway for other illicit goods, such as fentanyl, which has been talked about here. The sheer volume of these duty-free packages, though, is crippling our own economy and our own companies and our own American workers, especially in textiles, which is a crucial industry not only for my district but my state and indeed the country. So, Mr. Lord, how do we close these loopholes? What policy recommendations would be helpful to you in closing these loopholes?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Congressman. I want to acknowledge first that Customs and Border Protection is very much aware of the challenges that the textile industry is facing in this moment. We've been working closely with the domestic textile producers in the United States since, we'll say, September or October of last year. I've had the privilege of going down to some of the production facilities in South Carolina that you've mentioned during my career. It's an impressive operation. And I don't wake up every day, and my staff does not wake up every day not thinking about how to protect U.S. jobs. When it comes to the specific challenges in de minimis, we are ramping up our inspections of textile products in the de minimis environment. As an agency, we've made investments at some of our laboratory and scientific services centers around the country in Savannah, New York, and Los Angeles. They will have very cutting-edge technology to begin testing textiles for compliance with the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act. We do intend and are deploying that technology in the de minimis environment. There's a perception that we're not testing for that in the de minimis environment. That is not true.
Mr. Lord, let me ask you something real quick, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I've got 2 minutes, so I just want to kind of vet this thing through a little bit. Do you think that maybe labeling China as a country of concern would be a prudent step for us to take in Congress, because we know that most of these issues are coming from the PRC, at least they're a big actor in this, but would that be helpful to you in your efforts to do your job?
That is an excellent question, sir. It's difficult for me to answer without understanding what that label might trigger for in terms of additional legal authorities or presumption of guilt or anything along those lines. At Customs, we're focused on the China threat, sir. More than happy to explore those ideas with you and your staff. We're committed to finding workable solutions in the de minimis space.
Mr. Lord, as part of your portfolio, you oversee the de minimis data pilot program. What insights can you provide about the results so far?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate you asking that question, sir. Our 2 pilot programs in the de minimis environment have been running since the summer of 2019. Those 2 pilot programs look at a couple different things, but what I'll just highlight is what we're discovering is there is better data out there that will help us better segment risk and identify compliant or non-compliant shipments, particularly from what I'll call non-traditional actors in the supply chain, to include online marketplaces. We have successfully been able to pair a web address of a product listing with a small package coming through. That data from that website helps us make better risk management decisions. Last fiscal year, when there was 1 billion small packages entering the United States, over half of them had additional information from one of those 2 tests, which to us signals an interest in the private sector in getting this additional data for us. And as a result, we're in the process now of updating our regulations to codify the lessons learned from those tests.
Thank you for that. And I'll just conclude by saying, look, there are so many concerns. You know, I didn't know a lot about IP when I got onto this subcommittee, but there are so many concerns from the fees and tariffs that the United States is missing out on with the within the de minimis space. There's no adherence by foreign actors or entities on the Uyghur Act that you mentioned, labor standards. The IP concerns are very self-evident when you look at kind of what we're talking about here. And of course, at the end of the day, the real impact, and this isn't a fault at you, I'm just kind of sharing the concern that I have, which I think you share too, is that American workers and American companies are put at a disadvantage because we basically have created a free trade agreement with China because of this, because they're shipping these things in with substandard labor standards, and American companies are forced to compete with that on an international stage at a very big disadvantage to them. And so, however we can partner with you, I'm happy to do that and listen to your insights because I think this is a very big issue for our country to tackle. Thank you so much.
Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Lord?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that, Congressman. I would just like to say and offer my staff to reach out to your staff. We have an initiative that I mentioned in my opening remarks, the 21st Century Customs Framework Initiative, that proposes statutory changes to help us better manage this environment. We are concerned, just to be very direct, and we do need help and are eager to partner with Congress, so thank you.
Well, and thank you, by the way, for being, and all three of you, quite frankly, but thank you for being a witness that actually answers questions. We have that very rarely in Congress sometimes, so thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.